Okay, I'm here making some mental notes about that Zoom video I did, so it's gonna be a little bit disjointed because these are mainly meant to be mental notes for myself, and I don't really have an audience in mind, so there might be random jump cuts throughout the video as well. Probably not always gonna look at the camera as a result, so I just want to slap this together for my own mental notes. I'll be including some behind the scenes notes and bloopers at the end. Forgive the slightly vulgar language that are in the last couple of bloopers. I'll add some text warnings when that time comes, before and probably after. Then also show the dangerous time range to not watch if you don't want to see that part for whatever reason. Otherwise, let's get into some of my mental notes. As I said, it's a little disjointed, so just bear with me. So, the original plan with this was I was gonna just do an abstract flow instead of a full script, which I ended up doing. I did a full script and should have done an abstract flow instead, and then just simply go through that a few times. So, I did a video a few years ago where I showed my alter ego how to use his computer and stuff, and I did not script that at all. I really just wrote some main bullet points showing kind of an abstract flow, and it only took 2 takes to do that video for it to become successful. That was going to be the plan with this, but it did really work out. I basically just started writing down a bunch of notes. It got so detailed just because I wanted to make sure I could remember everything, and I liked some of the stuff I had, so I got to a point where I'm like, you know what, I'm just gonna do a full script at this point. Kind of wish I hadn't though, because it took a lot of time to make that and then also go through it in the first place. I'll talk about what ended up happening, and now I'm going to talk about what I expected to be able to originally do and what ended up happening afterwards. So, I expected to be able to record this whole thing in like 3 to 4 days later, as I was essentially going to record Clone 2's audio first. So, for context, Clone 1 is the one that did the programming, asked for help, that has this background right here. Clone 2 is the one that was wearing green and essentially helped me. So, I'm technically Clone 1, the original clone. The other clone just helped me out, that was wearing the green on the left on the main zoom view. So, for context, that's what Clone 1 and Clone 2 is. Clone 1 is the one in this environment, Clone 2 is the one that was essentially behind the curtains right over there. Obviously, it wasn't recorded next to each other, because if they were, I would actually have a table in this frame for that clone. So, yeah, Clone 2 is literally recorded to the right of me, but not at the same time, obviously. So, for context, that's what Clone 1 and Clone 2 is. Clone 1's the one with this background. Alright, I think I went over that enough. But yeah, the original plan, so I was going to record Clone 2's audio first, and then Clone 1, because Clone 1 was normally going to be recorded first, and I'll explain why in a bit. But I was going to record Clone 2's audio so that Clone 1 could essentially react to it when recording that. And then Clone 2 would be able to just simply watch Clone 1. And by Clone 1 being able to react to the audio recording, it reduces the amount of mental overhead. But that's not how it ended up working out. I ended up doing Clone 1 and then 2. Instead of Clone 2 audio, Clone 1 video, and Clone 2 video. That's how I ended up recording that. Now, when it comes to actually figuring out the content for the video, what I should have done instead of writing a full script was practicing a whole bunch and then limiting myself to just abstract writing, like a general overview of what's happening. So, of course, I wanted to actually record this video a few years ago, and I wanted to do something that would work for the format of the video, and also wasn't covered anywhere else, like in any of my other videos or anything like that. And this auto hotkey fixing the time code stuff for bookmarking fit the bill for that, in my opinion. Because I did show that script in a video, but not the major changes I made to it. This might be the only video that shows the most recent version of that script. Certainly the only one that'll explain it. And essentially what I did throughout this project is I wrote temporary notes like what I would end up covering in the video and just important notes to remember. Of course, I changed this over time as I experimented for what would work for the video over time. I did a bunch of experimentation until something consistently worked across the board. And of course, I had to tweak how I naturally had some things, like the path to the path that I have in my AutoHotkey loop to scan directories and subdirectories. I had to change that to the one that I ended up using in this video. I naturally had something else that I no longer use, so that had to get tweaked for the purpose of the video. I needed to make it so that Media Player Classic only did one window at a time, or else I would inconveniently have new windows open for each file I ran. For any file that I saved throughout the video, like the actual recording, like the test query AutoHotkey script, I needed to ensure that the folder that showed up in the save dialog was the correct one to avoid wasting time and having to choose the directory I'm saving to. I ensured that it was correct before I started recording from the get-go. So all this being said, I did keep certain parts of the script abstract. Like when I explained what the code does, I didn't actually write that down in the script. Some things that were really long I didn't end up writing down. I just wrote basically the essence of what I'm doing, like explaining the code or why do I have like the release all the modifier keys and move the mouse cursor? Why do I have those parts of the script? Basically, I just have notes saying explain why all that is. Instead of writing it down manually, I just kind of explain those things on the spot. So basically, the way I recorded this is I recorded the clone that was doing the programming first, which is clone 1, with this background, so that the other one can react to the recording. Like clone 2 basically reacts to the recording of clone 1 so that they can give help and they can work directly with the recording, not only to minimize having to go over everything in my head, but also to make sure all the timings are good and just work directly with what Clone 1 did. And with the nature of Clone 1 having more unpredictable variables, I didn't even worry about the exact wording with the first clone since the second could work with all the imperfections of Clone 1. The second clone could work with all the imperfections of Clone 1, exactly how it is. To make one thing clear, I never read off a script for either one of my clones since I memorized the overall flow. Clone 2 is basically just reacting directly to Clone 1, and Clone 1 just ran through the script in their head as well. Both of them ran through the script in their heads. I practiced the second clone based on running through the recording of the first clone, as I can practice the imperfections that ended up happening with Clone 1 and essentially work with it no matter how it turned out. So, for example, Clone 1 put a message box right after a loop statement, which was intentional, but they were supposed to move it away from the if statement afterwards, and I forgot to do that during the recording itself. So basically, Clone 2 just mumbled the mistake to acknowledge that it's a mistake that Clone 1 made, since I couldn't do anything about it at that point, other than record it again, which I was not going to do with how well things turned out. Or check time num. Don't forget it's not part of that loop. Here's a previous take of Clone 1 where I did that correctly. Time num. It's not part of that loop. Oh, oops. Yeah, good point. We want to be looping the file path and not message box a bunch of times.
That's how it should have turned out.
So basically, what I did since I ended up doing a full script was I understood the flow and went through it a few times. So I kind of wish that I only practiced pure talking during times to practice that and do computer stuff through actual rehearsals. So what I ended up doing was understanding the flow and I just simply went through it a few times. What I wish I did instead was having an abstract flow and I just practice pure talking, even with some slight notes of what I'm talking about, until it ends up coming out correctly pretty much every time. And same with the stuff I did on the computer. I just keep practicing that until that works out every time as well. And then just making notes through each iteration of practice I did, even for the stuff I didn't know, things would end up working out with enough practice, rehearsals, and iterations. And when I'm doing things that come out wrong, like things on the computer, I would address that throughout my practice iterations until it no longer happens and I can consistently do the right thing. And of course, for each take I did, as well as practice rehearsal, I had to restore everything, including my program, back to the very beginning for each new take in Clone 1 as well as my practice rehearsals. Clone 2 never had to restore back to the beginning since they're just reacting to Clone 1 entirely. Since I did end up doing a fully fledged script, it was very helpful to break that script up into multiple chunks and then just practice one chunk at a time. And then eventually I would combine things together. I found that very helpful since I had to memorize the whole script. That was a useful strategy. And as I practiced the script, I created larger text for the stuff I struggled with during my practice rehearsal so that eventually, when I had most things down, except for those things I struggled with a lot, I could just focus on the stuff I struggle with to prioritize that and have more repetition with those. Then once I get those things down really good, then I would practice everything as a whole. So I practiced everything as a whole, prioritize just the stuff that I struggled with and kept making mistakes on, then practice everything as a whole, having practiced all those mistakes and pretty much working all the kinks out. I also did a practice recording to determine what I wasn't sure about from a production side of things, like how I would even do both clones in the first place, and how I would do my screen shares with both clones at the same time. When I was talking on the whiteboard, I wasn't sure how that would work out, and then just places where I wasn't sure how the timing would work out, such as
No problem. My pleasure. Glad you're able to get your
yeah,
problem
now I'm
fixed.
finally at a point where I can use a custom voice command.
What do you
Well,
mean?
I've been programming a custom voice assistant called Minecraft. Hopefully that worked nice.
It did not.
Obviously, throughout this process, I did careful planning for exactly how I'd record stuff from a technical side, as I would struggle massively otherwise. So, first of all, I would decide which clone do I do first and which one do I do second. Because there's pros and cons of doing it in either order. So, obviously, clone 1 is one with this background, clone 2 is one that's wearing green if you needed context. But when it comes to clone 1, who's basically asking the questions, there's many more unpredictable variables since I'm doing programming and they're basically the leader. Clone 2 is really just following their lead, more or less. And by recording clone 1 first, I can work with the lead of clone 1 when I'm doing clone 2. They could just react to everything that ended up happening already. If I record clone 2 first, the pro is that both clones would be on an original Zoom recording, even the screen share, but that would be much harder to do since clone 1 has a lot more unpredictable variables and everything had to be determined ahead of time until it works out perfectly if I did it in the other order. So in general, anytime you do anything like this, probably my biggest piece of advice is record the one with unpredictable variables first, and then have the next one react to that. and just make sure everything works out, as well as actually recording and doing stuff. And one of the things that makes this all possible is because I'm using OBS for my Zoom camera, like the actual webcam overlay, like what I'm using to record this video right now. So not only did I do a Zoom recording, but I also recorded the webcam feed so that I could feed it into Clone 2's recording to react with. Exactly. Here's to us improving ourselves as one person. So that Clone 1 and 2 both appear on one recording, since one of them comes through OBS and one of them is live. But I realize I don't actually have to record the video for Clone 1, since I can take each clone from both Zoom recordings and stitch those together, which I didn't originally think I would be able to do, but I can, so I didn't have to feed the Zoom video through. But it has a benefit of audio going through, which I'll elaborate in a little bit. So, in order to make this work, I had to sync the OBS Zoom feed of Clone 1 into Clone 2 with the recording I was watching. Since Clone 2 is watching Clone 1's recording, I had to sync the Zoom feed with this recording that I was watching so that they all happen at the same time for production. The audio and video are in sync. And to make this successful, it was important for me to ensure that Media Player Classic, where I was watching Clone 1's recording as Clone 2, I had to make sure Media Player Classic was in focus before starting the feed and video, since I'm basically hitting play on OBS and Media Player Classic at the same time. Media Player Classic needs to be in focus, or else the button to hit play just won't work. Because then I match the frame, and then both of them play at the same time. And since I was watching the video of Media Player Classic, but the audio was also coming through Zoom, I needed to mute the Media Player Classic audio so that they weren't both playing at the same time. I watched Media Player Classic for the video, and I listened to the audio through Zoom, which is very useful because then I can check the synchronization. If this video and Zoom's audio are in sync, that means I'm gonna have good timings, since they're both different timings, and having them match will work nicely. A little bit convoluted, but these are mental notes for me, so deal with it myself. And before I even start synchronizing Media Player Classic with the OBS feed, I need to set up the multi-monitor situation, which I'm going to elaborate in a little bit, but I need to situate the multiple monitors first, because if I change the screen resolution or arrangement while Media Player Classic is open, suddenly the feed is going to go blank and I have to restart Media Player Classic. It might be a glitch with that, but I need to get the multiple screens situated, then synchronize Media Player Classic with OBS. Otherwise, I'm going to have to do it twice, because changing the screen stuff is going to screw it all up. Okay, now let's talk about how things were arranged. So, did I end up using multiple screens for like Clone 1 and Clone 2? Well, what I later established is I technically only need one monitor for Clone 1. But for Clone 2, I need multiple monitors, because one monitor would be for reacting to Clone 1. So I have a video of Clone 1 in full screen as Clone 2. And then the other monitor is where Zoom and the screen share is. Since I need to be able to do a screen share as well, I used a separate monitor for that, but I probably could have gotten away with just one monitor with Clone 2 as well. But it doesn't really matter that much, because I came up with a solution for both screens, since I only have one monitor out here and one laptop screen. If I needed another screen, I would have had to use my TV out there. I would have had to bring it out here, which I was originally going to do, but that would be quite a hassle. So I decided I could use a capture card instead. I could hook up my computer, the Intel NUC, to a capture card and then just treat that as a secondary screen. So I hooked that up to my Mac using the USB-C adapter with USB, basically convert HDMI input to USB-C or Thunderbolt. And I used QuickTime Player to view that feed since I was using OBS at the same time. I couldn't have multiple OBS windows open, but QuickTime, you can actually go to QuickTime and create a new movie or recording or something like that. And then you could select the capture card and it'll show right up in a QuickTime window. That was perfect for this use case and much easier than bringing the TV out here. And of course, that QuickTime window needs to be in focus so that I can see if the screen share is working properly or not. But just because I go to a screen share by pressing a button doesn't mean it always works, so I need to be able to verify that as Clone 2. So I had my Intel NUC, which is basically a portable Windows PC I have here. I had that hooked up to my monitor for both clones. And normally I have my Mac for that, which I do right now to record this. But I had my Intel NUC for the video because the stuff I was doing was in Windows and not Mac, so that worked perfectly. But I did use Mac to provide the Zoom connection because obviously I call myself on Zoom, so I had to have multiple Zoom feeds. I have multiple accounts, one personal and one work one. So I used both of those to accomplish this. The Intel NUC had one of them, which was the original clone. The Mac had the other clone. So that's essentially how I did that part. So in my first Zoom recording, which is recorded on the NUC itself, I had Clone 2 appear as an OBS feed. Because that's just what I did. So I had to pretend that the OBS logo on that feed was my face. So if I wanted to make it appear that I was looking at myself on Zoom, I had to look at the OBS logo, which was in the position of my face, basically. And as Clone 1, that wasn't particularly fun because all the stuff that Clone 2 says, I had to run through that in my head to be on par with everything. That's how Clone 1 did any of the reactions that they did. I mentally ran through it and pretended that somebody was actually telling me those things. I had to have the script memorized really good to be able to do that, as you can imagine. But Clone 2 had it easy because they could just simply react to Clone 1. But at the same time, Clone 1 had it somewhat easy because they could screw up a whole bunch, and Clone 2 can work with whatever imperfections they had. Clone 2 can't really have imperfections themselves. I mean, they kind of can, but it has to be able to work with how Clone 1 went, essentially. As long as they both work together, that's what makes a successful video. But doing it in this way was easier from a production standpoint because if Clone 1 listened to audio recordings of Clone 2, that could easily get out of sync with all the unpredictable variables that are involved. So if I were to go that approach, I would basically be playing this audio recording so that Clone 1 could just reference that, while Clone 2 would reference Clone 1's result of basically reacting to Clone 2's audio. Sounds complicated, but that's Clone 2 basically would have audio before any of them are recorded. Clone 1 can react to Clone 2's audio. Clone 2 afterwards can react to Clone 1. When you add clones, it gets a little bit confusing, but that is how it would have worked. If it was like 4 clones instead, that would be possible, I'm sure, but I don't even want to begin to think about how that would work. But if Clone 1 reacts to Clone 2's audio files, I would have buttons on my Stream Deck that allow me to go forward and backwards X amount of time. But you can see that would be problematic because if I go back like 5 seconds, am I gonna immediately be in sync again, or am I gonna frantically be figuring out what I'm doing? I also want to remind you that the clone in charge of going backwards and forwards with the audio, they're the ones that have to do the programming as well and have a ton of unpredictable variables as it is. They also need to look like they're not even using the Stream Deck to seek around Clone 2's audio either. That is such a clunky way to do it. It would certainly reduce a lot of mental overhead and make things easier, because then I could just listen to the audio and respond accordingly, but having to do it that way would just suck a lot. So as a result, I just memorized the script to the point where I could go through it all in my head. And if there were like generic responses between them, then I could just leave X amount of time in between each response, and then things would work out a lot better. And I technically wouldn't have actually had to go through the wording, especially if I memorized the timings for everything. But by going through the words, I could sort of react to it, even though I'm going through it in my head. I could react to the words as they feed through my head, if you will. And that's what I ended up doing. So yeah, as far as the audio recordings go, I'd have buttons on my Stream Deck so that I could go forward or backwards as needed. And it was really just going to reduce mental overhead, but I, again, practiced so that I didn't have to do any of that. And then that brings up a question. Would I have done just one recording, like one continuous recording where I could go forward or backwards? Or would I have created several recordings so that I could queue up specifically what I wanted, but take several hours to create all the audio files of everything that's being said? That could become a real hassle real fast. So once I had Clone 1 recorded, obviously I recorded in OBS for purely the webcam feed, and then with Zoom to get both Zoom feeds. And what I would have done then is take the recording directly from OBS and then copy it to the Mac so that I can feed it in for Clone 2. So Clone 2 could react to Clone 1. I feed in Clone 1's webcam feed essentially, but I realized I didn't need to do any of that as I'm basically watching a Zoom recording, and I could have stitched both of the local recordings together instead of having one local and one streamed from the Mac to the Zoom recording on Windows. So I ended up using the audio that came directly from Zoom. So every time I added the media source in OBS for Clone 1 for Clone 2, or the media source of Clone 1 for Clone 2, I needed to monitor the audio so that I could output the audio directly through Zoom from OBS. I used VB audio cable. Oh no. Since I did this on the Mac, I used Black Hole to accomplish this. If I was doing it on Windows, I would have used VB audio cable, monitored the audio through those respective softwares depending on which one I'm doing. But I need to remember to have that source monitor audio or it just won't go through to Zoom. Oh, and one thing I almost forgot to mention is I enabled original Zoom audio, like original sound for musicians, which is a Zoom setting you can configure, because otherwise the audio may have been all funky coming from OBS and Zoom's background noise filter stuff. Now, as far as the screen shares go, that's something that added a whole nother layer of complexity. So if it was just us talking, that would have been easy because I could just set it once and then it applies for the whole video. But when I'm doing a screen share, that's a whole different story because we have to transfer the clone from the main view to the screen share view. I know you're thinking, why couldn't I just take Clone 2's big view and shrink it down to the screen share view? Well, first of all, the name tag would have been a much different size, and the name tags are transparent, so it's not like it's something I could just do in post-production. So my solution to that problem was whenever Clone 1 does a screen share, Clone 2 also needs to enable a screen share at the same time. So the way I accomplished that was I added a button on the Stream Deck to enable the screen share, and you could do that directly on the Stream Deck now since Zoom has a SDK or API that allows the Stream Deck to interact directly with it. That was in a recent update, believe it or not. So a year ago, I probably wouldn't have been able to do that without auto hotkey manually clicking on the screen share button and then enabling it. So I had a button to pull up the screen share screen and then a button to actually hit enter and turn on the official screen share once I had the right thing selected. So that's kind of how I had the Stream Deck set up right there, and that's why. I also added a mute button for the OBS sound mixer because, as you know, I ate some food at one point. Clone number two ate some food at one point, and in case you didn't know that, that did happen. So if you didn't know that, look around for that. It's around a little before the middle. It's the first time I did that. And I added a mute button so that the chewing wasn't super annoying. I had chewing enabled for the first couple seconds, but then I hit a Stream Deck button to immediately shut that off. I could have done that in post production too, but that's one less thing to do, especially if I have the Stream Deck. Isn't one of the main goals of the Stream Deck to minimize video editing? I believe so. It allows you to do something called live streaming, which inherently allows you to minimize video editing. So as long as that's the case, I may as well utilize it for that. And since I was recording Clone 1 first, that meant that I had to use video editing to get the screen share from Clone 1 to also having Clone 2 appear on that very screen share from Clone 1. I had to use video editing to make that happen, and I'll elaborate a little more on that later. So one thing I didn't originally anticipate that I found very helpful was doing practice rehearsals to get in the zone for this. So when I first did my first takes of recording, I kept screwing up so many times, which you'll see in the bloopers. I mean, here's one example right now. Stop. I lost my train of thought. Let's start again. Hey Joe, how's it going? But yeah, I kept screwing up in this way so many times that I was like, at this rate, I'm never gonna get it done. So what I ended up doing was I just practiced all the way through and just ignored any mistakes that I made. And then when I did a full recording, I then decided I'll do one more for tonight and then I'll do the real recording in a couple days. Well, little did I know that that one more recording I did was a successful take. It wasn't originally planned to be, but everything turned out amazing. So I went with that for the final take. And I kept screwing up at first, but by practicing the rehearsal, even though I made all the mistakes, I got in the zone to stop caring about mistakes and obsessing over every little thing. So practicing all the way through was enough to make me be successful in the final take that I thought was just going to be a practice take. I'm telling you, going through at least once is really helpful because when I did the other clone a few years ago where I showed my alter ego their computer, I only did 2 takes right there, but I'm telling you, I learned so much from the first one that it led to the success of the second one. There's something special about just going all the way through, even with mistakes. It gets you in the zone, and it's almost like hyperventilating, makes you stop caring about screwing up. So one tip that I would give based on all that is everything you do, treat it like a rehearsal and don't ever treat it like a final take. I know this sounds crazy, but if you do it for X amount of minutes straight, don't even have a final take. Treat everything like a rehearsal where nothing is at stake and it doesn't matter if you screw up. Eventually, something will turn out successfully, and it's more likely to when you're not under a lot of pressure. By treating everything as a rehearsal, you reduce the amount of pressure drastically. And even if you make a mistake a few minutes in, just go all the way through because you're probably going to make mistakes later on as well. Well, this gives you an opportunity to practice that in basically a production environment, if you will. And that'll just ease your mind a lot by getting you in the zone. So treat everything like a rehearsal rather than a final take, which will help massively and it'll take off the pressure of screwing up so many times. So now let's talk about the order that I recorded everything in because I was a little bit strategic about that. So first I recorded clone 1 after of course doing practice rehearsals just to get the technology all figured out. When I actually started recording things for real, I recorded clone 1. And then immediately after the successful take, I then recorded the thumbnail portion of it. So I ended up doing a pose for like the thumbnail, as you can imagine. I was like, and I did that immediately after recording clone 1. And since I had the free version of Zoom, I can only do a session for like 40 minutes at a time. So that's something I had to keep in mind. But I did have plenty of time for this one. So after I recorded clone 1, then I recorded the intro and outro right next to each other because I wanted everything to look continuous. Since I was recording everything in a different order and even recorded clone 2 on a different day than clone 1, it was logical to record the intro and outro after a successful take of clone 1 because everything in the background, like how I have my sheets and my position and everything, would be exactly the same. It would look like everything just happened and that there wasn't a bunch of time in between. So obviously if I decide to do clone 1 one day, but I screw up so much that I don't have time for a final take until days later, I would rather record the intro and outro on the day that I had a successful take so everything looks continuous. Then I recorded clone 2 after the intro and outro, and then of course the thumbnail on that same recording. Because then what I could do when I make the thumbnails, just figure out the timings of each one and then stitch them together into one thumbnail. Basically, that's what I did with the thumbnail. I actually made the thumbnail in my editor DaVinci Resolve because why not? It provided all the tools I needed, and when I pick a frame from a video, it makes it real easy, so why not? I had a separate timeline for that. I duplicated the timeline specifically for the thumbnail so that I left the original video editing alone, but I'll go over the editing in a bit. So a couple things I had to keep in mind. So obviously I recorded clone 1, then the thumbnail, then the intro and outro, then clone 2, then that thumbnail. But when I initiated the Zoom call, I needed to make sure I initiated them in the same order for both clones so that they appear consistent on the video. So if I start with the Intel NUC and then do the Mac, both sets of clones need to initiate the call in that order. There were two separate Zoom calls, by the way, in case you didn't guess that. And then in case you didn't know, you could arrange how everything is positioned on the screen share. Like when you're on the screen share, you have the webcam feed, you could drag that around the screen if you want. But I purposely did not drag it around because I wanted it to be consistent in both Zoom recordings, which makes things easier for editing, I would imagine. Speaking of editing, let's get into that now. So I had two separate Zoom recording files for each clone, which were both recorded on the Intel NUC. The Mac did not do any of the recording. I probably could have, but that would all be streamed over the internet rather than the local recording, which using the local recording increases the quality significantly versus having one streamed and one local. So I edited those Zoom recordings before adding in my intro and outro. It just made sense to do things in that order. So since I have both of those recording, I synced them up, as you can imagine. So I synced up Clone 1's audio since both or since Clone 1's audio appeared in both recordings, I synced everything up based on Clone 1's audio. So on the main view where you see both of us, that's not the screen share. I swapped the order of them around because that's the order they would appear in on a real Zoom call. The original clone should be on the right side, and then the person I'm calling would be on the left side. On the original recording, they were swapped, so I just cropped everything and then swapped their positions. A slightly hidden Easter egg as a result of that. Clone 2 is actually looking at the wrong position, so they were looking at the right side, which to them, Clone 1, which they're reacting to, should actually be on the left side rather than the right. But honestly, that's kind of a hidden Easter egg at this point. But also, you don't know if I had one or two monitors. I actually had one, but you could also draw the conclusion that I had two monitors and I was looking at the left side, but on the right monitor and not the left one. Like, I could have easily been like this. As far as the recordings go, I took both of the local recordings from each one because Clone 2's recording has both of them, but I decided to take the local recordings from each clone and put them together for the best quality. So both sides were actually local, which is not something you're going to get on normal Zoom calls. But since I had the advantage of doing that, why not take advantage of that? And because the timings of activating the screen share weren't perfectly synced, I had them within a few frames, but it still wasn't quite perfect. So to deal with that, I had to blend the differences in the timing. So when I first enter the screen share, this is what originally happens. So the position changes, as you can see. So first of all, I cropped out Clone 2 in the screen share view so that I could blend it in the recording of Clone 1. And to deal with the problem, I froze the first proper frame of Clone 2 and perfectly positioned it over the OBS feed that's on Zoom 1 or Clone 1's recording for a seamless transition from the normal view to the screen share view. I also hid this effect that happened during the transition as well. So the first time I shut off the screen share, Clone 1 disabled it a bit faster than Clone 2. So I had to take the proper first frame of Clone 2 that appeared in that view and make it show up a little bit early with Clone 1 showing up. So the frame is frozen for the first little bit of it, but it's really hard to notice unless you look real close. I made the transition as seamless as I could. There's really nothing else I could do. I basically applied the same concept each time the screen share was turned on and off and did what was required to make that work. That really did add a whole complexity to it. Like, I spent a lot of time making the transition as seamless as possible. I wouldn't have had to do any of that if I stayed in the main view the entire time. If I ever do a video like that again, I want to be in the main view the whole time. No screen shares ever again. So when I brought Clone 2's feed into the screen share, I had a problem with the little blue color spill if you look at it real close. Due to the blue background of Clone 2's screen share and the pixels blending when you zoom into it, that's kind of what happened. So to deal with it, I wasn't really sure what to do. So I ended up asking ChatGPT for suggestions, and it recommended that I apply a color key to remove that. I was a little bit skeptical at first, but I decided to try it anyway with a delta key or infusion. It actually worked surprisingly well, but it was also slightly keying my shirt. So I created a mask to tell it to only apply to the edges. It was an inverted mask, so it did everything but that region. And then I changed the replace mode to source. And even then, it's still not quite perfect if you look at the edges, but it's much better than having blue spill on it, so I'll take it. The edge looks like part of the video anyway. The audio for both clones came from Clone 2's recording, so there is some occasional stuttering on Clone 1 due to the connection. I think it's kind of unnatural for Clone 1 to be stuttering instead of Clone 2 with the nature of how I recorded this, because I'm the original clone calling Clone 2, so Clone 2 should have stuttering if any of them do, but that wasn't the case here. So instead of replacing the audio all over the place with the local audio, I decided to just replace it with where the stuttering was most noticeable. Here's some of the original audio with the stuttering. Yeah, we're doing 5 characters. I don't care what this is called, we'll just do the registry variable. Bunch of configuration I had to do with Python dependencies and stuff. I really hope you're right. There might be some occasional places of stutter that I completely missed, so those are hidden Easter eggs if there are any yet. I also realized I probably could have used audio ducking to blend both of them together automatically, but I don't know for sure if that would have worked. It doesn't really matter anyway though. I ended up creating a compound layer so I could add the intro and outro to the clip and do a dip to white transition on everything as a whole. I also later realized that Zoom records at 25 frames per second while my intro and outro were recorded at 30 frames per second. That can cause frame rate stuttering due to the differences in frame rate. 30 and 25 frames per second don't mix together very well, like how 30 and 60 do, so that's what gives you effects like stuttering. It's a little jittery, which may or may not be noticeable. So what I did to fix this was I processed the intro and outro using Handbrake and converted it to 25 frames per second, and it did this by frame blending. It blended it together so that it looks a lot more natural, supposedly, than what it would have done otherwise. I had to do constant frame rate, or else my editor would recognize it as a wrong variable frame rate if I didn't do that. And when I was messing with the clip attribute to attempt changing it, it actually changes the clip speed to match the frame rate. So I had to use Handbrake or something else instead of the editor directly. Otherwise, I would be talking too quickly if I brought it from 30 down to 25. I can't have that. It would be unnatural to talk slower or faster just to get the frame rates to match successfully. Okay, so now I'm going to overview some behind the scenes tidbits in this video. Firstly, there was a particular line I got wrong in the video. You can clearly tell I was struggling to remember my line here. Watch now. I have an unbiased perspective with these things. Yeah, that's why you should take a break if you're stuck on something. Sometimes solutions randomly emerge in the middle of nowhere. Exactly. I think this serves as a reminder to look at things from the bigger picture before getting too caught up in things. Yeah, that's why you should take a break if you're stuck on something. Sometimes solutions randomly emerge out of nowhere when mulling over stuff. This is the original line, which is not featured in the original video, so enjoy the exclusive content here. I figure having a second set of eyes is always helpful, especially when I'm caught in the middle of things. It really helps have an unbiased perspective with these things. Good point. See, I didn't think of this myself because I'm the one asking the question and caught in the middle of it. Exactly. I think this serves as a reminder to look at things from the bigger picture before getting too caught up in things. Yeah, that's why you should take a break if you're stuck on something. There were other moments where I slightly blanked out. Another example is when I said this. Yeah, that sounds like a solid plan. I meant to use the tone, yeah, that sounds like a solid plan. See the difference? Yeah, that sounds like a solid plan. I was just recalling the line even after saying the first word, which you can kind of tell if you look real close. There were some moments where I looked directly at the camera versus my clone. That's a habit that was hard for me to break in this video, especially considering I had no clone to look at as the one on the right. Kind of a hidden Easter egg at this point. As this clone right here, I had to rely on running through the other clone's lines in my head and I had nothing to reference. You'll probably notice that I timed the whiteboard talk here perfectly. Any time code to give it. What expressions should I use? Well, that may not seem like a big deal at first, but I had to go through like 30 seconds worth of lines with the other clone, and I still managed to time it perfectly somehow. Every time I practiced this particular line before recording the real thing, I was always several seconds too early and never timed it perfectly during any rehearsals, and I've done lots of them.
But you could have 0 or
What
more
expressions
of those.
should I use?
Well,
But it's a miracle that the real thing was the only time I ever timed that perfectly. On top of that, I also want to remind you this is in a 27-minute continuous take with absolutely no jump cuts whatsoever. This was about 6 minutes into that. I mean, granted, I did make a facial expression right here where I slightly blinked and moved my head, which I did to signal 3 seconds before I was about to start talking. So if I accidentally finished a whiteboard talk too early, I would have paused, and once this signal happens, I would have waited 1 second, then said, "Does that make sense?" I would have been able to pause however long I needed before saying, "Makes sense?" But still, the fact that I didn't need to do any of that was kind of a miracle to me. There were some imperfect timings that I had to deal with when reacting to Clone 1's recording. For example, sometimes Clone 1 left larger gaps for Clone 2 to speak than what it was originally supposed to be. On the bright side, I got to watch and practice these imperfections before recording Clone 2, so I could work with them and make things work out. There's one example I could think of where I felt like this ruined the original tone I was going to use for a particular line, as I had to purposely slow down my speaking pace to accommodate this larger gap for speaking. Where I said this, "That's the power of not being impacted by this myself. I'm not caught up in it like you are." The tone I wanted to originally use if there wasn't such a large gap was, "That's the power of not being impacted by this myself. I'm not caught up in it like you are." I couldn't do it at the pace I wanted, or there would be an awkward pause here. I sure wish I would have been able to pull this off. If I actually had a Zoom conversation with myself in real life, I think this is pretty much exactly how things would have gone, especially the cheers part. Exactly. Here's to us improving ourselves as one person. There are some things that would likely be different though, like when I was explaining about my custom voice assistant. Both of my clones obviously know about that already, as well as the auto hotkey stuff during the video itself, but I also wanted to do this in a way that would give the audience some context of what's going on, especially those tech savvy who might be familiar with some of this stuff. I think one of the main lessons of this Zoom call, if anything, is to look at things from an outer perspective when stuck on stuff. I think everyone could use that as a reminder every now and then, especially considering how difficult this is to do. In a real call with myself, some of the background information might still be overviewed from scratch to look at things from an outer perspective like this. I think that should be the takeaway from this video, if any. This is a skill I'm trying to improve on, and I think this is one that everyone could probably use improvement on. I added some little touches throughout the video besides eating food, like when I asked myself how something works and then thanked myself right after. What's the command for getting a registry entry again? I think it's reg query, then the path to the key. Okay, thanks. Here's a fun fact. The idea of eating food actually came to me in a dream. Way before I completely finished the script, I had a dream where I was watching the final product, and that's one of the things I saw myself doing when watching it, so I felt like I needed to do that in some form. In the dream, I actually got up and even opened the fridge on camera, which would have been cool to include, but at least I still took the main idea. If I had the ability to record dreams, I would include a clip right now, although I'm not sure how easy it would be to see my TV screen where I was watching it. It was clear to me, so maybe it would be clearer than it would appear on cameras with exposure and stuff. I had other little touches, like when Clone 1 occasionally nodded in response, like when I clicked through the search engine result. Let's try this. And then when the other clone said, "That's interesting." Play favorite?
That's interesting.
There were also a couple instances where I was about to interrupt myself, which I feel helps the authenticity of our conversation.
Do I need that around percent? No, I don't think so. Then what you're searching for?
I did mention this already, but just to remind you, every single facial expression that Clone 1 did was from running through Clone 2's lines in my head and reacting to that. Nothing here was done externally in any form. Related to this, I just want to real quickly discuss a thought experiment I found myself having regarding the Turing test. So, in case you didn't know, there's something called the Turing test created by Alan Turing that tests the sentience of artificial intelligence. It's basically a question of whether something is convincing enough to appear sentient. For example, I previously mentioned how I asked ChatGPT a question and the answer it gave. If someone gets fooled by the ChatGPT response and thinks it's a real person that said that rather than artificial intelligence, which ChatGPT is, then one might be able to say that it passes the Turing test. It gave almost a human-like response to my question nearly instantly. Does ChatGPT pass the Turing test? I don't know. That doesn't have to do with the original point I'm making here, but it's still an interesting question. My original point is, I had a conversation with my clone, as you're aware. We're literally the same person and not two different people. See where I'm going with this? This is a thought I had. Even though I was literally having a conversation with myself, is our conversation convincing and realistic enough to be like a conversation between two different people? I don't think the Turing test would answer this question, but it certainly makes me wonder if there's a similar test for the same people having a realistic conversation that appears no different than two different people having conversations. I guess my thought experiment would be, does our Zoom call with myself pass this Turing type test? I don't know, it's just a thought I had. Okay, that's it for the behind the scenes tidbits. Now onto the bloopers. Alright, now let's look at some of the bloopers, including some that happened during practice rehearsals.
How's that going?
Classic. It overwrites the previous. Oh. Let's start from the top. Okay, should I tell you what this code does first? No. That's no good either. Oh, how's that going? Now let's stop. I don't think we did that right. How's that going? Start over. Should I share my screen? Stop. I lost my train of thought. Let's start again. What did not work? Something didn't work there. Register variable. Match, maybe. Match, not replace. No, probably. Oh, okay. Just match. Okay, so time is what go. Oh, screw it. So for whatever reason, let's start again. I realized I forgot to erase the whiteboard last second.
Not too bad, Joe. You? Same.
This literally happened in the successful take. No joke.
Stop. I lost my train of thought. Let's start again. Hey, Joe, how's it going? Not too bad, Joe. You? Not bad. Very busy as usual. Same.
I guess it is different. Yes. Come on. My mind blank. Also, Minnesota. Oh, great. I was hoping to not screw around with this again. What should I change? Nice. I think I just said nice. Let's make sure it works with our video. It overwrites my previous bookmark rather than creating it with the click of a button. Oh, great. I don't want to potentially switch Python dependencies or Python libraries because there's a bunch of configuration I had to do with Python dependencies and stuff. I think this serves as a reminder to look at things from an outer perspective before getting too caught up in things. When stuck on stuff. Well, I went atrociously, but ordinarily I do my thumbnail now, but oh good. So let's say you have oh come on. Let's say you have this time code right here, followed by an optional colon of one or more numbers, but you could have 0 or more. What expressions should I use? Well, delete that last colon 0 through 9 right there. Okay. See that last colon 0 through 9 there? Yeah. Put that around parentheses. Alright. Oh, /capital R. So type that command with reg query. Okay. Reg query with that. Looks like you use /capital R. Type the reg query command. Play the favorites. Yeah. That's probably easier in Python than AutoHotkey. Yeah, I currently need special formatting with it right now. Yeah, that's a good idea. I suppose that's something we could improve on as a person. Exactly. Here's to us improving ourselves as one person. Except the formula is going to be something like this. Fair enough. It might be worth the hassle. So I'll just create a new AutoHotkey script. And since we're testing it. Okay, so just use reg read. I think I did it. I screwed up in one area, but F that. Cannot believe I freaking did it. I was literally worried those last few seconds because my mind seriously started to blank. No joke. No joke at all. My mind started to blank out, especially as I got towards the end. It was like, do not screw up at this point. I am so glad I did another attempt. Also, it's 10:21 p.m. That has a special meaning. No, it's really 12 actually. I changed the time zone so it didn't look so late. It's not necessarily a lie. It's just that I have a different time zone. People ask, I have to answer the truth. I'm glad I did this again. If I waited, I think I would have been screwing up. I'm almost tempted to do the second clone right now. I'm serious. That's a dumb idea though. Okay, let's do the thumbnail. That'll work. Ah, it feels so good. I absolutely must back this up. I would absolutely hate to lose this. I don't want to lose this under any circumstances. It better convert correctly too. Okay, that's it. I am out of here. I think I did it. I screwed up in one area, but you did not. That. I'm gonna count that as a success. I screwed up in one area, but F that. Okay, thumbnail time. I can't believe I freaking did it. I'm about to tune out of myself. Watch. Yeah, I figure I could save time getting help. Oh no. Yeah, I figure I could save time getting help from you. Should I share my screen? Sure. Oh crap. Let's try that again. Alright. Should I share my screen? Sure. Nice. The problem is I don't. Okay, we're just practicing here. You understand? All yes. Right. I screwed up. You media player, just so you know. You won't know this yet, though. No problem. My pleasure. Glad you're able to get your problem now I'm fixed. Finally at a point where I can use a custom voice command. I've been programming a custom voice assistant called Minecraft. Oh, why am I kidding myself?
Yeah, why?
Exactly. Hopefully that worked nice.
It did not. My own fault, though. You did good. I did bad.
Thank you for your patience.
No problem.
Alright, so I'm gonna do the command real quick now. Got it?
Yep.
Alright.
Sounds good.
Nope, wait. Sorry.
What do you use to execute commands?
OS.system. Stop. We're done.
Alright. This is not going good, just so you know. It's going pretty badly.
Well, looks like that's it for the screen shares.
That's a relief. I've been doing terribly.
Alright. Okay, I'm doing a screen share. I'm about to click share now. Okay.
Good idea.
Yep. I hope that went well.
That actually
Yeah,
went the
let's
best
find
so
out.
far.
This is a pain.
It is.
Alright, we're good with that.
Okay.
I hope.
It went not too terribly.
Okay, I'm gonna go grab the whiteboard now. I'm gonna make you memorize this. Ready?
What am I memorizing?
Oh, wait, why did I grab it? I only grabbed it for you. I don't need it. You need it. What I did was all for you. Got that?
Yes, thank you a lot. It helps.
Alright, let's... Okay, we'll see how this works. Go ahead.
Makes
How do I
sense.
do that? What expression do I use? You don't have to answer that question, by the way. This is just a practice, alright?
Sounds good, boy.
So, I hope you did a good job with that.
I did okay. You waited
Good.
too long.
So,
You gonna say something?
right, okay. I'm just trying to think, and I'm realizing after I asked a question about what expression, that's how we know how we did. And you'll know at this point, even though I don't. Yep.
Yeah.
All right.
You waited too long. Can't complain too much.
I have a sneeze coming, I think. I haven't been able to sneeze the past few days because it's been really stubborn.
Yeah, that's really a pain.
I don't want to sneeze right now, but at the same time, it'd be nice if it happened for a change.
Such an annoying feeling. I get it.
Pain, isn't it?
Totally, yeah.
Okay, looks like I have to do my if statement shenanigans.
Sounds good.
So bear with me 1 second.
Okay.
So we already did this, I believe.
Oh, we didn't? Oh, yeah, we did.
Fair enough. It might be worth the hassle. Now stop. Let's not get caught up, alright?
Yeah, sounds good.
I hope that we did it naturally.
Not very much.
I gotta go grab the water bottle. We both need this, alright? So, I'm the one grabbing it. Give me credit for it at least, alright?
Sounds good. I got it.
It was close by. Some of the work was done for me at least.
That helps. Good for you.
You excited to see how it turns out?
Oh, yeah, for sure. But we did bad, though, too.
Like I care.
You should
You
care.
better not screw up any of our extra conversation Easter eggs, alright?
Oh, I screwed up, alright. You made it difficult.
You remember what I had in mind right now. Got that?
Yeah, but you made it
I tried
pretty
to make
difficult.
it intuitive, but I know some of them weren't going to be.
You should have done a better job with that, you know.
Okay. I hope my mind doesn't blank out this much during the actual thing.
Me too.
Well, I am about to do you now.
Okay.
You ready? Were you ready, by the way?
Kinda, sorta.
I'm sure that whatever it was good news, right?
Yeah.
All right, I'm gonna head out now. So have a good rest of your day or night.
Yeah, you too. Sweet dreams, lucid dreams. May you get lucid.
Imagine calling yourself on Zoom and seeing something like this and wondering what your own self is doing on there. Okay, you ready to begin?
Now I am.
Alright, let's begin then.
Okay.
So, first of all, ask that question now. So you need help with some auto hockey stuff? Go ahead.
So you said you needed help with some auto hockey stuff?
Yeah, I figured I could save time getting help from you. Should I share my screen?
Do you have any last minute questions?
It's kind of hard to think. Oh, yeah. Well, we could probably real quickly think about how I would do everything in Python to make sure I can still do that.
Sounds good.
I'll probably have to fetch the time from the registry. What's the command for getting the registry entry again? Don't answer that question. Don't you dare.
Alright.
So I'm gonna make this mistake, alright? So remind me of the mistake I'm about to make then.
Okay. It's not part of that loop.
Oh, oops.
Okay.
I hope we have the timings good.
That was perfect. That was perfect.
Right. I hope that worked out, even though I know I need to practice that one. I know full well I do.
That wasn't bad. Couldn't complain there.
Good job, I think. At least I didn't have to use the whiteboard just now, like you did. I grabbed the whiteboard just for your sake. Alright? I didn't use it at all. See, it was kind of pointless for me to grab it, wasn't it?
Well,
but I could have just as easily left that up to you. Be grateful that I grabbed it for you, alright?
Fair enough.
No problem. Okay. We want to get to bed decent, right?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. So let's make that happen.
Yep.
Do you think we're going to have any success with the transition at all tomorrow?
Maybe if we try.
Yeah, exactly. Just remember, we're gonna get used to the idea that doing nothing counts as a valid thing.
Correct.
Alright, let's do the next thing.
Okay.
Just assume this is alright. I'm gonna cut corners if that's okay.
Fine with me.
Alright. Well, practice makes perfect.
Yep.
Okay, now I'm gonna do this command stuff, right?
Sounds good. Easy for me.
We are gonna be practicing this after all, so we'll be okay.
Yes.
What's the command that I'm doing again?
Find str/question mark.
Correct. So now I'm gonna do that. We did it.
Good. Time waster.
Okay, so what I want you to do... Sorry if this isn't as fun as the first one turned out.
Oh, it was
wonder
better.
whose fault it was. Which one of our faults that was? Do you have any idea whose fault that could have been?
I think that was mine since it was on my end. Probably mine.
It was your clone, so I think it is reasonable to think it was your fault.
I own it.
I think you may have got that backwards, but whatever. We're both the same person, right?
Yep.
I think that's pretty much it for the trial run number 2. So, how did that go? Do you know?
Better than last time.
Well, regardless, I think we should be able to make things work out ultimately. So,
yeah.
Why don't we call it a quits, huh?
Yeah, that would be nice.
Alright, we are now entering Vulgar territory, so skip to the following time code to skip to the outro. You could also find the time code for the outro in the description or on the time navigation bar. Otherwise, enjoy Vulgar territory. We just need to parse out the correct number of characters at this point.
Yep.
Oh, damn it. Something didn't work there. What the hell just happened? Match, maybe. Match, not replace. Oh, okay. Because you are such a lazy bastard, I will go grab the water bottle for us.
Okay, fair enough. Why you calling me a lazy bastard? You're the one that needs it.
I think you may have got that backwards, but whatever. We're both the same person, right?
Yep. I had it the whole time. Nah, 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 nah.
Alright. I forgot the whiteboard. I'm gonna go grab that now.
Ha ha, I got it
Hey.
here.
Yeah, well, you only have it because I do. You only have it because I grabbed it. That was not your doing at all. That was entirely my doing. Stop being an ungrateful bastard. Got it?
Yeah, well, you're a forgetful bastard, you know that?
Treat me with respect around here.
Fine.
This guy's just a fucking bastard. I hate him. I hate that guy. Let's trash talk him, alright? That guy forgets everything. I remember everything. Here's clear proof I have a good memory. They have the worst, atrocious memory you could possibly imagine. Hate them so much. They're wasting my time. I want to get to bed tonight. That's never going to happen at this rate. They really need to hustle and stop wasting my time. I don't think they can hear us, can they? You bastard time waster. Completely ignoring me, huh? Yeah, well, be grateful. I'm the one that grabbed the whiteboard, so you didn't have to. I made a sacrifice for you. You're the lazy bastard, not me. I'm the one that grabbed it. You didn't. Who gets all the credit?
Fine,
Exactly. That's why you're the lazy bastard, not me. Show some respect around here.
Fine.
Still pretty ungrateful. I grabbed the whiteboard. I'm gonna grab it later if that's okay with you.
I got it.
You evil bastard. Call me a bastard all you want. I won't be here. Alright. You are such a bastard for not being prepared. I'm prepared and you're not. You need to be more prepared next time. What a bastard this guy is. I'm prepared, clearly, and now they are wasting my time, and I am just fed up with this effing bastard. I have the marker too. I hope they remembered it. Oh, good. Looks like they have it. They might hear us. Keep it a secret between us. You can call me a bastard all you want, but you're the lazy bastard because you only have the whiteboard and marker because I'm the one that brought it there. You have it because of me, not you. You're the lazy bastard. Fair enough. That is the truth, isn't it? Thank you for admitting that.
Yep, no
Alright,
problem.
let's see if we can make stuff happen here. There you go, you stubborn bastard. Alright. Oh no. Damn it. I might have to match up with a different frame. That's it. So if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, feel free to let me know. I'll try to get to you as soon as possible. Otherwise, yeah, I think that's it. So thanks for watching and have a good one. Before I peace out, my bullet points for all my notes happens to be exactly 69 lines long. Isn't that just great? Otherwise, peace.